Fine. So let us start with TestNG today. That exactly what it is and how it helps us. Look, till now we have studied Selenium. We have not studied how to build the test cases and all that stuff. Okay, TestNG as a tool will help you to build the test case. Okay, right. Now, how do you work with TestNG? How do you configure TestNG and what are the features of TestNG? Let me discuss those. Right. So just 1 minute. Let me open the syllabus. Okay, so out here we have got TestNG. That what is the role of TestNG in a framework? When we build end-to-end Selenium framework, TestNG is responsible for the whole collaboration of the test cases. Okay, for building the test cases, for reading the data from some external file, for running the test cases, for generating reports and all that stuff. Okay, so first thing is that you have to configure TestNG on your PC. Okay, so to do that, what you need to do is just go to Google and after going to Google, just type TestNG Eclipse. TestNG is added as a plugin inside Eclipse. Okay, so just search for TestNG Eclipse and in the results you'll get the first link. Go to the first link and go to install the plugin link over here, and then what you need to do, you need to click on, you need to copy this URL. Okay, I'll copy it. I'll also give it to you on the chat. Alright, and go to Eclipse, go to help in Eclipse, install new software. Okay, go to help, install new software and paste the link, hit the enter button. It will take some time. Over here it is saying TestNG loaded 14%, right, 15%. It will load 100%. You will get this checkbox. Click on this checkbox and hit on next, 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 and your Eclipse will also restart. And TestNG will be installed as a plugin inside Eclipse. To verify, you can go to Windows, Show View, okay, Other, and under Java, you will be able to see TestNG. Okay, so this is how you can verify TestNG. Now inside the source folder, what I'll do is that I'll make a new folder or a new package named as test cases. So folder is package is like a folder inside a folder. Okay, so I made this package test cases, and in the test cases package I will create a new class name it as, for example, order food test. Okay, a simple test case, right? So in TestNG there is no main function. Please note this point, that in TestNG there is no main function. You have got annotations in TestNG, annotations like @test and all. You can write @test public void search food menu. So this @test means that this function is a test case. This is known as an annotation. There is no main function, there are annotation functions in TestNG. You move the mouse over this, you will get the option that add the TestNG library to the project, which you can easily add, and then you move the mouse over this test annotation again and you can write import test annotation. import test. So you can import the test class as well. Okay, right. Now you can write inside this test case system.out.println searching. You can also write a Selenium code inside it, right? And when you run this code, this is the run button, you run it. You see that total test runs are 1, failures are 0, and skips are 0. Okay, right. So if you go to results of running the class order food test, you will get the results in search food menu and all that stuff. This will be green, that means it's running fine, and this is a new tab. You will see results of running the test. Okay, right. Apart from this, if you refresh your folder, right click on the folder, refresh it, you will have a test output folder. In the test output folder, you will have index.html. Right click on index.html, go to properties. You will see the URL. Okay, open this and go to this URL. These are the default TestNG reports. Okay, you out here you will have the test case mentioned over here, but this is not a very good report. Okay, right, it is not a very good report. It is more or less useless. Okay, we don't use this, right? So what we use is we use extent reports, which I will talk about later on. Fine. In the @test annotation, right? So out here you can have many @test annotations as well. Okay, for example, I can write add to cart. This function will have the code which will add the selected items to cart. And then you can have @test public void checkout. Okay, right. So inside it you can type checking out. Okay, when you run this code, you will see the output. Total runs are 3. Okay, and failures are 0, skips are 0. Right. Okay. Now, if you look carefully, the output, you see the output, it is writing, adding, selecting item, checkout, and searching. Is there something weird over here? What do you feel? Order. Yes. The order is weird. Okay. The test cases, we expect them to run from top to bottom. Okay, that first this test should execute, then this test case, and then this test case, like this. Okay, but it doesn't work like this. It has its own ordering thing. Okay, it orders as per its own algorithm. Okay, right. So what we do is that we have to prioritize the test. Okay, you have to write over here priority equals to 1. Priority equals to 2. Priority equals to 3. So you have to prioritize the test cases. Okay, right. Now, if I run this now, you will see the order will be corrected. Alright, order will be corrected, searching for food, add and checking out. So you in a single test case, you can have multiple @test annotation functions and you can prioritize them as well. TestNG will have its own order of executing. You can also do validations. Okay, for example, I'll create a new class known as validations and I'll explain you in TestNG how you can do validation. Okay. In validations test, for example, I'll write @test public void do validate and I'll import the test annotation. Right. Now in testing, what is the thing? We have actual value. Okay. And we have an expected value. Actual value comes up from the application with the help of Selenium. For example, title of the page driver.getTitle. Expected value you will be storing somewhere. You will be storing in a properties file or an XLS file. Okay, or a text file. So you have to compare both of them and pass or fail the test case. Okay, right. So how do you do that? Okay, we do it with the help of assertions. There is a class known as assert. Okay, if I write assert dot, I'll get lot of functions from that class. Alright, fine. You can write assert dot assert equals actual and expected. Okay, right. And this is the actual value and this is the expected value. You can give both of them. Okay, you can give the actual value first and then you can give the expected value. Alright, and when you run this, it will pass. The test will pass. Make sure you import assert from org.testng.assert. Okay, right. Now If you run this, you will see that it will simply say over here that total test runs are 1, failures are 0, and skips are 0. Okay. Similarly, if I change this x and y, now it will fail. It will run the case. It will run the test. Now it will say that failures are 1. And if you look at the results of running the test, you will see it's failing. Okay. Right. Now, similarly, you have got another type of assertion. It's used a lot. That is assert dot assert true. Now, what is this? You have to give some condition over here, a condition which evaluates to true or false. For example, 3 greater than 2, and a message. This message is error message. If this condition evaluates to true, then the assertion will pass. If I run this code, you will have no failure, nothing. If I write 3 greater than 12 and run it, you will see that failures are 1. It's failing. And in the results over here, you will see that whatever error message you gave, that error message will appear over here. Okay, right. Okay. Now, when do we use this type of assertion? That is the question. Look, remember I had taught you a function, say is element present, which tells you whether element is present or not. You can call that function is element present over here. Pass over whatever the XPath of the element is, whatever it is over here. So if this function returns you true, that means element is present. There will be no error message. Or if it returns you false, then you can throw the error message that element is not present on the page. Okay. Right. So in this scenario, you will be using this type of assertion. Now, sometimes you are on a web page and you are 100% sure that the test is failed. For example, you click on a link and on the next, instead of going on the next page, you get a error that 404 page not found. Or you click on a link and it takes you to altogether different web page, which should not have been coming. So for that, we have the function assert dot fail with some error message. Assert dot fail. This will make sure that the test has failed. It will deliberately fail the test case. Anybody with any questions? No question. Right. Sometimes you know that the test has failed, as I said, that you get a 404 error message or something, then you are sure that the test has failed and you can use it. Okay. Now, at times, you don't want to run a test case. You want to skip the test case. If you want to skip a test case, you can write throw new skip exception. skipping the test. Skip exception will cause or will force you to skip the test case, and while skipping it will give this message that I am skipping the test because of this reason, any reason. I am skipping the test case. Okay, when you run this code, in the results you will see that it's written over here, skipping the test. Okay, right. This is how it works. Total test runs are 1, failures are 0, and skips are 1. Generally, we keep the information about all the test cases. Say there are 1000 test cases. You have to skip 500 of them. So we keep the information in the Excel file, which to skip and which not to skip. And we can keep a flag in the Excel file, and correspondingly we can throw the skip exception inside the test case. Okay, right. Now coming over to this test, order food test. Out here, if I write over here, say assert dot fail. Okay, right. And you have to write throw new skip exception, Archana, inside that to skip it. I simply fail this test case over here. And if I run it, I'll get an output like this, that search food menu is failing, but add to cart and checkout. Okay, these two test cases, they are passing. Okay, right. Now, there's a question being asked that if we read from Excel, then how do we write to skip the exception in respective test case? I'll come over to that when I tell you in the frameworks. And in the frameworks, I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. Just for now, being understand that this command is there to skip the test case. Now out here, it's a little weird thing that the first test over here is failing and the remaining two are passing. When you could not search the food, how could you add the food to the cart? Alright, so we introduce dependency over here. You have to make the test cases dependent on each other. So you will write over here that this test case depends on methods. In a string array, you can write search food, and this method over here, it is depending on methods search food menu and add to cart. Okay, so when you run this code, you will see that the first test it fails and the next two steps, test cases, they are skipped. They are in yellow. That means they are skipping. The first is failing. You get an assertion error. Okay. right? So you can make the test cases dependent on each other. If the first test case fails or it skips, the next two will not be executed. They will be skipped. Alright, fine. Now there are predefined annotations in TestNG as well, which help us a lot. Okay, for example, I'll tell you, you have annotation at the rate before test. Public void, you can write before. And there is an annotation at the rate after test. Public void after, you can write. You can import these two annotations. In before test, I will simply write before test execution. In after test, you can simply write after test execution. And when you run this code, you will see that in the output, before test is printed in the beginning and after test is printing in the end. No matter whether the test cases they fail, they skip, whatever happens, before test will be printed before executing all the test cases, and after test will be executed after executing all the test cases. There's a predefined order. The position of these annotations, it doesn't matter, you can put them anywhere. Okay, but there is a predefined order. Alright, the order is that first before test will be executed, all the test cases will be executed, and then after test. Suppose all the test cases have to be executed on the same browser. So maybe what I can do is that in before test I can open browser, and in after test I can close the browser. Okay, or a single browser. Okay, right. Similarly, you have got annotations like at the rate before method. Okay, I'll write public void and at the rate after method. Okay, these are the two annotations, before method and after method. Alright, before method will be executed before executing every function. Hold on, I'll just type over here some stars and before method and after method. And when you run this code, you will see that before method and after method are executed before and after executing every test. Before and after executing every test, before method and after method they are executed. Okay, so suppose we have to build a different report for every test case. Maybe you can initialize the report in before method, and in after method you can close the report or finalize the report. or you have to execute every test on a different browser. So you can, before method you can open the browser, and after method you can close the browser. So there are various things which you can do. Okay, right. Guys, there's a question being asked, I guess. Okay. There's a, can I have it? It's info@qtpselenium.com, my email ID. Now, before method and after method, they are executed before and after executing every test. Okay, so there is a difference between both of them. Okay, right. Now, there are other annotations as well. For example, you have to run one test case multiple times with different test data. For example, I have a simple test case like login test. Okay. And it's got the annotation at the @retest public void do login. Okay. You import this test case, and suppose I have to execute this test multiple times with different sets of data. So in TestNG, what we do is that we use a two-dimensional data array. Okay. Two-dimensional data array basically means an array which will have multiple rows and multiple columns. Okay, right? The data is present in every row. Okay, data is there in every row. The number of times you want to run the test case, the number of rows are equal to that. If out here I have 4 rows, so that means I want to run the test case 4 rows. And number of columns are equal to the number of parameters in the test. First row will hold the first set of the data, for example, some username, some password, some phone number, some email ID. Okay, so all that stuff, sorry, went away. Yeah, all that stuff for the execution of the data, right, will be present in the first row. So second row will have a different set of data for the test case, third set will have different set of data. So I hope you know about two-dimensional arrays. There are indexes 0, 0, 0, 1 like that. Okay, so what we do is that it's very simple in TestNG. The first step is that you make the annotation data provider. Okay, there is an annotation known as @data provider. Okay, you get that data provider. I'll name the function get test data. So data provider annotation is responsible for providing the data to this test case. It makes a two-dimensional object array and puts the data inside it. Okay, I'll make a two-dimensional object array called data equals to new object array 3. That means there are 3 rows and 2 columns. It's like this. So there are 3 rows and 2 columns in this data array. Okay, you can fill the values in the first row. Okay, you can write data 0, 0 equals to username 1, data 0, 1 equals to password 1. Okay, then you can get the second row, put the data inside the second row, that username 2, password 2. Okay, 1 and 1. That means the second row of data is out here. And then you have the third row. Okay, and you can put the data in the third row as this. Okay, so first thing is, the first step is that you have to make the data provider annotation, put the data, and you can simply write return data. Okay, right. So now what will happen is that this data provider will have the complete data for the test cases. Okay, right. And in the test annotation, you can write over here that the data provider is get test data. So you have to link this test case with the data provider. Okay, you have to mention it over here that the data will provider is get test data. Archana, I'll answer your question. Just hold on. I'll tell you. Okay, you can tell your test case that this is your test data get test data annotation. Right. Sorry, function. And now what will happen is that the second step is you have to link it. And the third step is number of parameters in the test case. Input parameters have to be equal to number of columns. If I'm specifying two columns, username and password basically over here, so I should have two input parameters in the test. If I mention three parameters over here, then I'll have to add three input parameters in the test. Okay, right. So out here in the do login test, you are supplying the username and the password. When the TestNG will run this test case, it will understand that fine, this is the data provider. Okay, the function out here is get test data. It will go inside the data provider. It will understand that I have to run the test case 3 times. So it will call the test 3 times. First, it will call the test with this set of data, and second time it will call it with this, and third time it will call it with this. If I run this program, automatically the test will run 3 times. You see that? So it's all about configuration. You have to do the right configuration. Later on in the framework, I will be reading this data as well from the Excel file and putting in this two-dimensional object array. Okay. Generally, we don't hard code the data. We read the data from the Excel file and put it in the array. Okay. Now, out here, You can also run the test cases. I have got 3 individual test cases. I am able to run them one after the other. You can also run them in a batch. That is, you can run them together with the help of TestNG.xml. Alright, hold on, I'll tell you. We can make an XML file. This is the, you can take it from me from the project. TestNG.xml, in which you can mention all the test cases. For example, first I have to execute login test, and the class name, you have to give the correct package name and the class name. Package name was test cases. Inside the test cases package, you had the login test file. The spelling, the uppercase, lowercase matters a lot over here. Should be correct. Out here you can give anything. Okay. Then you have the test order food test. So you can give any name over here. Order food test. And it should be in a class, that is test cases package dot order food test. Okay. Then you have the validations test. So the test is validations test, and test cases dot validation should be the. So you can mention all the test cases in this XML file. Okay, right. You can take it from me. I also generally copy this file. There is no need to make it. Okay. So you can just right click on it and run as TestNG. So what will happen is, okay, there is some error. Alright, you see that I did not put S in the end over here. In the test case, it's validations.java. S is there. So you have to be careful. You have to give the correct name. Okay. And when you run this, you see that it will execute all the test cases in a batch. First login test, then order food, and then validations. You see that? So you can run the test cases in batch as well. In batch means you can run them together. So TestNG will be really helpful. TestNG is not just meant for Selenium. It's a unit testing framework. You can use it anywhere. Alright. We use it with Selenium. We integrate it with Selenium because Selenium never gives us these features to build test cases or read from the Excel and all. Okay. So inside these test annotations or functions, you can write your Selenium code over here. Alright. Fine. So we will be using this TestNG in our framework, and we will use it a lot when we do the framework. So the next thing which we will be building is, we will be building up a framework. It is an end-to-end implementation of the test, right? And it will take us a little while to build that framework. All right. Now, anybody with any questions in TestNG? Anyone with any questions? You can also execute your test cases parallelly in TestNG. Okay. In TestNG.xml, if I write over here parallel equals to test, then all the test cases will be invoked parallelly. If I don't write parallel equals to test, they are invoked in a serial order from top to bottom. But if I write parallel equals to test, you will see that all the test cases will be invoked parallelly. The order won't be same. So login test is executed, then validations and order food. So all of them will be executed parallelly. Okay, the order will not be the same, and you will see that they will be invoked at the same time. Fine, we will be using this also when we work with grid. When we work with grid, we invoke the test cases parallelly. Okay, but for time being, don't go into parallel execution, just simply run it. Alright. Tomorrow we will be discussing the exercises. Let us see. Okay, right. Yeah, you can do anything, Sunny, that is not a problem. Okay, right. Now, just a minute.